Hey, folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. So tonight, we're returning to New Jersey. And now, when most people think of New Jersey's unexplained history, the one name immediately comes to mind is the Jersey Devil. Now, the Pine Barrens have carried that legend for generations. And for many people, it remains the state's defining paranormal mystery. But deeper you investigate New Jersey, the stranger the picture becomes. Now, this is not just the state of one legend or one creature. The Garden State has produced accounts of Dogman-like beings, Bigfoot activity, black-eyed children, winged humanoids, UFO encounters, alleged alien retrievals, dimensional anomalies, and insectoid humanoids seen along quiet river corridors. Now, some of these reports come from the Pine Barrens. Others come from Atlantic City, Newark, Cumberland County, Fairview, Fort Dix, McGuire Air Force Base, Belleplain State Forest, and the Musconetcong River. What connects them is not one single explanation. What connects them is atmosphere, witness shock, and the sense that something is moving through New Jersey's woods, abandoned places, skies, roads, and waterways. So tonight, we're going to examine a new lineup of unexplained New Jersey reports, beginning with a Dogman encounter in Manchester area near the Pine Barrens and the old abandoned brick factory region. Now, this first report comes from a witness who believed he saw what many people would call a dogman or wolfman in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. The witness explained that he was not someone unfamiliar with the outdoors, and when he received his driver's license at 17, he began spending much of his free time hiking across the East Coast, especially through New Jersey Pine Barren. He later worked as a naturalist at Batstow Village in Wharton State Forest, a large state forest within the Pine Barrens region. He said he gives us this background for one reason. When he sees an animal in the woods, day or night, he knows what he's looking at. But nearly 6 years after the incident, he still had no rational explanation for the creature he saw. The encounter occurred in Manchester, New Jersey, near the abandoned brick factory. The witness was with two friends whom he referred to as Alan and Chris. Alan was driving his truck, and the group had spent time off-roading with several of Alan's friends. They had been driving dirt trails, socializing, and hanging around for a few hours. The witness emphasized that he was sober. Alan, who was driving, was also sober. Now, Chris had been smoking weed, but the other two had not. Now, as the group began to leave, they drove along a wide dirt trail, roughly 30 foot across. Alan asked the witness to keep an eye out for deer. He was driving about 35 miles an hour and staying near the middle of the path in case an animal suddenly jumped from the tree line. Now, after a few minutes, the witness noticed what he first thought was a deer running alongside the truck from within the trees. Now, at first, all he could see was a dark brown patch of fur moving parallel to them. Then the animal accelerated. It moved ahead of the truck, still within the tree line, until it was roughly 20 feet in front of them. The witness expected it to bolt across the road like a deer would, but that's not what happened. The creature suddenly came out of the woods on two legs. It looked directly toward the truck, then crossed the 30-foot wide dirt road in only 2 or 3 steps before disappearing into the opposite tree line. The witness said that for as long as he lives, he'll never get what he saw. The creature stood roughly 7 foot tall and was covered in dark brown fur. The chest and stomach area had less fur and appeared lighter than the rest of the body. But beneath the fur, the witness could see extreme muscle definition like that of an Olympic bodybuilder. Its head was canine with a long snout and 2 distinct upright wolf-like ears. It had large muscular legs, a powerful torso, arms like that of a very muscular man. Its hands were huge and ended in visible claws. The eyes reflected an unnatural color of light, unlike anything the witness had ever seen in the animal kingdom. And as soon as the creature vanished into the other side of the woods, Alan slammed on the brakes. Chris, despite being high, immediately reacted and said, "I know I'm high, but what the hell was that?" The two friends turned to the witness, the person they considered the outdoorsman of the group, and asked him to explain it. He couldn't. He told them he had no answer based on reason, science, biology, or anything he could logically identify. Alan, who did not believe in the supernatural and refused to entertain paranormal explanations, drove out of the area as quick as possible. And to this day, the witness said Alan will not discuss what happened and acts as though the incident never occurred. Now, Chris has also struggled with the memory, trying at times to convince himself that it was just not real, but the witness remains certain of what he saw. Now, he stated that he does not believe in bipedal canines and that it should logically and biologically not exist. And yet, on that night in the Manchester area, that's exactly what he saw. Now, this first case gives us a classic New Jersey Dogman profile: a tall bipedal canine, dark fur, and an athletic humanoid torso, powerful legs, clawed hands, wolf-like ears, and a long snout, and eyes that reflected in a way the witness could not compare to any known animal. Now, location also matters. Now, Manchester, the Pine Barrens, and the abandoned brick factory region have long carried a strange reputation. But our next report moves away from the apparent creature encounter and into a much stranger category: low-flying craft, white orbs in the woods, movement in the fog, possibly camouflaged, and a witness who felt something communicate directly with his mind. Now, this next account comes from a 35-year-old man living in Cumberland County, New Jersey. He described himself as grounded. After high school, he served in the U.S. Army as an intelligence analyst. Later, he worked in New York City as a construction project manager before moving back to New Jersey with his wife to be closer to family. The incident occurred in October 2018 at around 11:45 p.m. The witness stepped outside onto the front steps to smoke a couple cigarettes before trying to sleep. Everyone in the house was already in bed. The night was mostly clear, but there was a fog close to the ground. and as he looked across the street towards the woods, he noticed movement within the fog. He said it looked as though invisible or camouflaged figures were moving out there, things he would not have been able to detect if the fog had not been clinging close to the ground. At first, he tried to make sense of it. Then he noticed a white truck pass by the house. It had already been driven twice. When the truck stopped at a nearby stop sign, the witness could hear a man and woman arguing. The woman got out of the truck screaming at the driver. She slammed the door and the man sped away. Then the woman walked into the woods across from the witness's house. That alone was disturbing. According to the witness, there was nothing back there except trees, artificial lakes known locally as blue holes, and deep isolated terrain stretching toward the Delaware Bay. About 5 minutes after the woman entered the woods, the experience escalated. The witness heard a loud noise from the woods sounding like metal being ripped apart. He struggled to describe it because it sounded so unnatural. It lasted 10 to 15 seconds and then stopped abruptly. That sound was replaced by something else, a vibration or hum that he could feel more than hear. He described it as if there was a massive sound nearby, but outside the normal range of human hearing. That low humming sensation continued throughout the rest of the encounter. Then something seemed to reach out to him mentally. There were no words. Instead, he felt a calm warning or kind of a heads up, as though whatever was present was testing his reaction or preparing him for what he was about to see. As this feeling of calm came over him, he noticed a light rising from the woods in the distance, perhaps 5 or 6 miles away. At first, it appeared to be only a ball of light, but he somehow knew it was moving towards him. Then he saw something even closer. In the woods directly across the street, no more than 50 yards away, white orbs of light began appearing. Some seemed to flicker into existence. The witness estimated there were 12 to 16 of them. The lights moved smoothly through the woods, but they did not illuminate the surrounding brush the way flashlights would. He said the area was dense and full of thorn bushes, making it almost impossible for people to move through that terrain, especially with the smooth motion he was seeing. He became convinced they were not people carrying lights. And as he watched the orbs, he looked back into the sky and saw a craft approaching. By then, it was perhaps 1,000 yards away. It was flying very low, only about 3.5 to 4 stories above the ground. Its path would take it almost directly in front of him, at an angle that allowed him to see both the underside and side of the object. The craft was dull black rectangle. Now, the witness described it as single story in shape and approximately 35 yards long by 20 yards wide. Underneath, he could see the larger rectangle appear to be made of 3 smaller rectangle panels joined together. Lights flashed beneath it in a pattern, cycling one way then back again. At the time, the witness felt as though the craft was signaling to orbs on the ground. The craft made no sound. The only thing he heard or felt was the same low buzzing or humming sensation had begun after the metallic ripping noises. It moved slowly, much too slowly, he thought, for a conventional aircraft to stay in the air. He looked away for only a moment, glancing back down at the orbs. One of them had begun to cross the street in front of him. Then he looked back up, and the craft was gone. It had not flown away. It had simply vanished. That was when the reality of what he was witnessing hit him. His wife, daughter, and mother were all inside the house, less than 50 feet away from whatever was happening. He decided not to investigate further. He went inside, locked the doors, and remained on edge. He said he felt watched for the next 2 hours. Now, there was no missing time. The entire event lasted approximately 20 to 30 minutes. Looking back, the witness wondered about the white truck and the woman who walked into the woods at the beginning of the encounter. He also questioned whether The movement in the fog would be related to what some researchers call the Glimmerman effect, where witnesses report seeing camouflage, distorted, or predator-like outlines in the wooded areas. He also noted that his part of New Jersey has a history of UFO reports, and he speculated the isolated lakes, dense woods, and proximity to major cities such as Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., might make the region an ideal place for something unknown to remain hidden. Now, this Cumberland County case is loaded with high-strangeness elements: fog movement, possible cloaked figures, anomalous sound, telepathic calming, orbs moving through dense woods, a silent rectangular craft, and a strange human element involving the woman who entered the woods. But New Jersey's UFO history does not stop with civilian sightings. This next report is one of the most controversial military UFO cases ever associated with the state: the Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base incident of January 1978, involving claims of UFO activity, a non-human entity shot by military police, a body recovered near a runway, and the removal of personnel allegedly connected to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio. Now, on January 18, 1978, an alleged incident involving Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey occurred. The case centers largely on the claims of an Air Force security policeman known publicly as Jeff Morse or Jeffrey Morse. According to the account, Morse was stationed at McGuire Air Force Base and was on duty during the early morning hours around 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. when unusual UFO activity was reported over the adjoining Fort Dix Army installation and McGuire Air Force Base. Morse alleged that the New Jersey State Police and Fort Dix Military Police were responding to activity toward Brownsville, New Jersey. A state trooper reportedly arrived at McGuire's rear gate requesting access to the runway area and the wooded section connected to the Fort Dix training area. Now, according to Morse's account, the trooper said that a Fort Dix MP had been pursuing a low-flying object. The object reportedly hovered over the MP's patrol vehicle. It was described as an oval-shaped and glowing bluish green. The MP's radio transmission was allegedly disrupted. Then, according to the claim, a being appeared in front of the police vehicle. It was described as roughly 4 foot tall, grayish-brown, with a large head, long arms, and a slender body. The MP reportedly panicked and fired several shots from a .45 caliber weapon at the being, and one round toward the object above. The object allegedly shot upward and joined other lights high in the sky. Now, the wounded entity was said to have fled through the woods toward the McGuire fence line. Morse and others reportedly searched the area. The alleged body was then found near a disused runway at McGuire. According to Morse, the being had apparently climbed the fence and died after crossing into the air base. He described a strong odor around the body like ammonia. The area was quickly secured. Air Force Office of Special Investigations personnel allegedly arrived and took control of the scene. Later that day, a team from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base reportedly arrived aboard a C-141 cargo aircraft. The body was allegedly sprayed with something, placed into wooden crate, and then sealed inside a larger metal container and loaded onto the aircraft. Morse later claimed that he and others were warned not to discuss the incident or face court-martial. Now, 2 days later, according to the account, Morse and others were allegedly taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for interrogation. Morse said he was again warned to remain silent and signed a form that he believed was meant to bind him for life. Soon afterward, he was transferred overseas to Japan, Okinawa. Other personnel allegedly connected to the event were also reportedly transferred to separate locations. Now, the case later drew attention from UFO researchers, including Leonard Stringfield and Richard Hall. It was discussed in MUFON-related material in later UFO research publications. Now, a disputed incident report was said to have circulated, with Air Force representatives challenging the authenticity on the grounds of formatting and terminology. Another figure connected to the case was retired Air Force Major George Filer, who claimed he was present at McGuire Air Force Base the morning of January 18, 1978. Filer stated that he witnessed unusual commotion and later heard from personnel that UFO activity had occurred and that an alien body had been recovered. As with many alleged crash retrieval and body retrieval cases, the Fort Dix McGuire incident remains controversial. The claims are extraordinary, and the available documentation has been debated for decades. But the case remains significant because its specific location, its named military setting, and the consistency of the central story over time, and the later involvement of UFO investigators who believe the witness deserves serious attention. Now, whether it represents a genuine suppressed military incident, a misunderstood event, a hoax, or something else entirely, the Fort Dix McGuire case remains one of New Jersey's most provocative UFO legends. Now, the Fort Dix McGuire case takes us into the world of alleged military secrecy and UFO retrieval lore, but our next account shifts sharply into urban horror. This report does not come from a lonely dirt road or a military base. It comes from the ruins of Old Essex County Jail in Newark, where an urban explorer planned to spend the night and claimed he was attacked, or at least confronted, by a huge winged humanoid with glowing red eyes. Now, this next report comes from a witness in Newark, New Jersey, who enjoys exploring old abandoned buildings and forgotten locations. In May 2023, he decided to visit the Old Essex County Jail, a deteriorated structure that had fallen into severe ruin. Walls have collapsed, ceilings have opened, and much of the complex have been left exposed to decay. Now, over the years, squatters and homeless people have reported moved in and out of the location, though the witness said they usually do not stay long. Now, he had wanted to explore the jail for some time. So one weekend, he strapped on a GoPro and entered the property, planning to spend the entire night inside. Now, according to the witness, many of the locks on the gates had been cut, and there were gaps in the fencing. A dirt road led into the complex, making easy access. He took his time filming the exterior before entering the buildings. Once inside, he explored different sections of the jailhouse. He quickly understood why so many people found the place disturbing. He described the atmosphere as disgusting and putrid, partly because of the transient activity inside. Eventually, he made his way to the lookout tower. It seemed to be the most comfortable place to settle in for the night. From there, he could see his car and had a wide view of the facility. So after dark, he got into his sleeping bag and tried to rest. But then around midnight, he was awakened by a loud banging sound. He grabbed his lantern and turned it up brighter. Then he saw the source of the noise. A huge figure with giant wings had hurled itself against the window of the lookout tower. The impact shook the entire room. The glass began to crack as the creature struck the window again. The witness described the figure as massive and terrifying. It had large red eyes that glowed in the lantern light. Its body was black and covered in hair. Its wings were bat-like with an estimated wingspan of perhaps 15 foot. He believed the creature looked like a disturbing combination of a moth, a bat, and a human. Shocked, he began running down the stairs of the lookout tower. In his panic, he stumbled and dropped the lantern. It shattered on the steps, leaving him in complete darkness. The banging stopped. Then he heard the being take flight. Its powerful wings lifted it away from the tower. but moments later it was gone. The witness later wondered whether the lantern light had attracted it. Now, afterward, he spoke with other urban explorers who mentioned stories of the so-called Batman in Newark. He had never heard of such a creature before the encounter, but apparently others had encountered or at least heard of the rumors or something similar. The report remains especially unusual because it places a winged humanoid not in a remote wilderness area, but inside a decaying urban ruin in one of the New Jersey's largest cities. And honestly, before all the activity in Chicago, this was probably one of the only known winged humanoid encounters in an urban area. There were a few others, but not like this one. Now, this Newark jail encounter adds a dark urban winged humanoid element to New Jersey's paranormal map. Red eyes, massive wings, a black hairy body, and a ruinous, abandoned location make it feel almost folkloric. Yet, the witness described it as immediate, physical, and violent enough to shake the room. Now, from there, we move south into Belleplain State Forest, where two hikers did not see a creature directly, but heard and witnessed activity that strongly suggested the presence of something large, powerful, and possibly not human. Now, this next report comes from the witness who contacted me after searching for information about Bigfoot sightings in New Jersey, especially in the southern part of the state. The witness and a friend were hiking on the East Creek Trail in Belleplain State Forest. They were members of a hiking club outside of Philadelphia and enjoyed exploring new locations whenever they could. The incident occurred on a Saturday in the late afternoon around 6:30 p.m. The weather was warm and the two hikers were headed back toward their car, which was parked approximately a mile and a half north of their location. They were on a section of trail with a boardwalk running through the swampy, thick brush forest. They stopped briefly to rest, and both commented on how quiet everything had become. Then, as they began walking north again, they heard deep grunts coming from behind them. They turned and saw a tree in the distance shaking violently. The tree was far enough away that they couldn't determine its exact size, but it was tall enough to be easily seen above the surrounding brush. Seconds later, they heard a loud crash from the northwest. Then another. The deep grunts grew louder and more crashing sounds came from the northwest. The witness described it as if there were multiple sources of sound, almost like a back and forth display or challenge. The two hikers began moving quickly along the trail despite carrying gear on their backs. Now, the witness admitted being terribly frightened. Her friend was nearly frantic and had begun creating distance ahead of her on the trail. The strange noises continued for several minutes before finally fading. The two reached the car shaken but safe. Now, during the drive home, they discussed what had happened. Both were thinking the same thing: Bigfoot. The tree shaking, the deep grunts, the heavy crashes, and the apparent back and forth movement all pointed towards something large and powerful. The witness's hiking partner had previously had a possible Bigfoot sighting while camping in the Poconos, and she had always been especially alert during hikes. At a hiking club meeting 2 days later, they shared the account with the other members. Surprisingly, several people in the group took it seriously. Some agreed that the activity sounded like a possible Bigfoot sighting. Others admitted that they had experienced odd encounters during their own hikes. The witness later clarified that the swamp area contained white cedar and oak and thick brush and dead trees. And based on the terrain and the strength of the activity, it seemed unlikely to her that a person would have caused what they heard and saw. Now, southern New Jersey is usually associated with the Jersey Devil, but this case remains another possibility that parts of the Pine Barrens and surrounding forests may also host large bipedal cryptid activity. And I have heard a lot of Bigfoot reports coming out of that area for the past 20 years. Now, Belleplain gives us a report based on a visual sighting, but not only on visual sighting, but also on behavior. Tree shaking, grunts, crashes, swamp cover, and apparent intimidation or communication between unseen sources. But our next account moves into a different and very unsettling category, the black-eyed kid phenomena. This one takes place not in the deep woods, but in Atlantic City during a wet early morning walk to a parked car. Now, the next witness reported an encounter from September 2016 in Atlantic City, New Jersey. He and his girlfriend were staying at a hotel in the city. It was early Saturday morning, and they were hosting another couple from Philadelphia. They were talking, sharing stories, and enjoying the night. Around 2 a.m., they realized they were out of beer. So the witness's girlfriend remembered that there were a couple of bottles of sparkling wine in the trunk of their car, so she handed him the keys. The parking situation was inconvenient, and the car was parked on a side street more than a block away. And as the witness walked toward the vehicle, he could hear music and noise from a club down the street. But as he turned onto the street where the car was parked, he felt suddenly and strangely alone. The air was heavy and misty with drizzling rain. Street lights reflected across the wet sidewalk. He reached the car and unlocked the trunk. Then he heard a voice behind him. "Sir?" Startled, he turned and saw a teenage boy standing just a few feet away. Now, the boy appeared to be around 16 years old. He wore old faded jeans and a dark hoodie. The witness jumped back and told him that he had scared him. The boy didn't react. He simply stared. Then the witness noticed the eyes. They reflected the street lamp light, but they were completely black. Now, at first, the witness tried to rationalize it. Maybe the teenager was on drugs and his pupils were extremely dilated. But the boy didn't seem intoxicated. He was calm, sober, and unnervingly composed. The boy then said he was lost and tired and asked for a ride to his mother's house. But the witness said the boy did not look tired, worried, or lost. Instead, he felt predatory, like something studying prey. The boy began moving closer. The witness broke eye contact. He said it was difficult to do because the eyes seemed compelling, as though the deep blackness was trying to hold his attention. He backed away and stepped onto the curb, telling the boy he could not help because he had friends waiting. He avoided looking directly into the black eyes. After a few seconds, the boy said, "Okay, never mind. Here come my friends." The witness looked past him and saw two younger kids about a block away coming in their direction. Then he realized something was wrong. They weren't walking. Their legs weren't moving. They were hovering a few inches above the sidewalk and floating towards him. Now, at that moment, he panicked. He turned and ran toward the hotel. As he fled, he heard a horrifyingly groan behind him. He felt as though they were right behind him and then experienced a painful sensation of something clawing on his back. He reached the hotel entrance and looked back. No one was there. He hurried back to the room, out of breath and in pain. His girlfriend and the other couple were startled and asked what had happened and where the wine was. He did not tell them the full story. He only said some thugs had tried to attack him. He ended the gathering and said he wanted to call it a night. But he didn't sleep. He feared the black-eyed kids would find him. Now, this account is especially disturbing because it contains several recurring black-eyed kid elements. The request for entry or transportation, unnatural calm, emotional pressure, black eyes, fear response, and a sense of manipulation. But it also had something even stranger, the apparent levitation of approaching children. Now, the Atlantic City report moves the black-eyed kids phenomenon into a wet urban nightscape with the witness who felt hunted rather than merely approached. Now we're returning to UFO material, but a very different type. This case involves 3 teenage witnesses in Fairview, New Jersey, a silver saucer seen in daylight, sudden paralysis, missing memory, and a later recollection of being inside a craft that seemed far larger than it appeared from the outside. Now, this next report was forwarded to me from a local investigator who had been looking into unrelated case. The incident involved 3 teenage witnesses who had been playing basketball from approximately 6 to 9 on a Saturday morning. The weather was clear and sunny. They were across the street from a fire station in Fairview, New Jersey. And as the three boys walked back to the friend's house, the reporting witness noticed something odd. The area seemed strangely empty. Normally, he said there would be 50 to 100 people in the park, but now there were no cars, no people, and no normal activity. Then he noticed rainbow colors coming out of the corner of his right eye. When he looked, he saw a shining silver metallic saucer with round tinted windows. He alerted his two friends, and they saw it as well. The witness heard and felt a whirling rush of air and a roaring sound. His shirt began flapping as if it were standing in a 50-mile-an-hour wind, though there was no natural wind. Then all three boys became paralyzed. They couldn't run. The next thing they knew, they were back at the friend's house. They had no memory of walking there. Now later, the reporting witness recalled being aboard the craft, though his two friends did not remember that part. He remembered seeing his friends lying on operating tables while he stood about 30 foot away. Inside the craft appeared much larger than it had looked from the outside, and he estimated it may have been 400 foot across. He described approximately 25 beings. They were about 4 foot tall, gray in color, with large round heads and large black eyes. 10 to 15 were near him, while the others were around his friends. The beings touched him all over. Communication seemed to occur telepathically, and the witness had the impression that the beings were surprised he could hear them. Now, his mother had previously told him that psychic abilities ran in the family, though he had never taken that seriously before. He asked the beings why they were there. His impression was that they were friendly, curious, and not trying to harm anyone. He believed that they may have been helping his two friends, both of whom had heart problems, and that the encounter may have extended their lives. He remembered looking out a window and seeing the basketball court below. He also saw other beings moving through long corridors. Now, after the boys returned, he remembered seeing the craft descend. It moved up and to the right, then left, and then up and away, leaving a rainbow-colored trail behind it. Then he returned home. His mother said he seemed different. He replied, "It's no big deal, Mom." Before the account was finally shared, he had told the story only to his two daughters, believing no one else would accept it. Now, that Fairview case contains many classic UFO abduction elements: environmental silence, missing time, paralysis, medical procedures, telepathy, gray beings, and a craft that appears larger inside than the outside. But our final report takes us into one of the strangest humanoid patterns ever associated with New Jersey, the Musconetcong River Mantis Man, a case I investigated myself. This is not a single isolated sighting. It's a cluster of accounts connected by location, witness activity, physical description, and one especially eerie detail. The being seemed surprised that people could see it. Now, in July 2011, an experienced outdoorsman reported an encounter of what he described as a praying mantis man along the Musconetcong River near Hackettstown, New Jersey. Now, at first, the case seemed isolated, but later, similar reports from the same river corridor suggested that something stranger may have been occurring there. Now, the initial witness was fly fishing with his boss after several days of heavy rain. The river looked calm, but the current was strong. He was chest deep in the water, bracing himself against the flow. Then he noticed movement to his left. About 15 to 20 yards away on a sloped east bank, he saw a tall humanoid figure moving away from the river toward a nearby field. It appeared to be 6 to 7 feet tall, lean, jointed, and powerful. The first detail he noticed was a strong grasshopper-like thigh, but the body itself was upright and humanoid. The head was triangular with huge slanted black eyes. The body looked gangly and knobby with insect-like qualities. But the witness emphasized that it did not look like a giant bug. It looked like a living biological humanoid. Then the being turned and looked back over its shoulder. The witness had a strong impression that it was astonished at being seen. There was no aggression, no chase, no vocalization, only a moment of direct eye contact. Then, within seconds, the figure became nearly transparent and faded from view. The witness did not believe it was a ghost or a spirit. He felt it was a physical creature, somehow cloaked. He believed that the strong river current, his position in the water, and the blank white sky against the figure, behind the figure, may have allowed him to see it at just the right moment. Now, soon after that report was made public by me, another similar account surfaced from the Hackettstown area. Now, according to a local forum post, a successful businessman confided in a friend about an encounter he and his brother experienced while fishing near Stevens State Park along the Musconetcong River. The second incident reportedly happened around dusk. The witness's brother was fishing about 50 yards downstream when he felt a strange vibration in his right ear. He turned toward the bank and saw a 6 to 7 foot praying mantis-like humanoid standing there. It was described as black and gray, upright, and apparently shocked that he could see it. The encounter lasted only seconds, but the witness was deeply affected. He became emotional when retelling the account, later admitted he had been so frightened that he had lost his bladder control and set down the water to hide it from his brother. He kept his story mostly private for nearly 2 years, and the similarities between the two reports were difficult to ignore. Both involved the Musconetcong River. Both witnesses were fishing. Both described a tall mantis-like humanoid. Both encounters were brief. And in both cases, the being appeared surprised that the witness could see it. Now, additional impressions later came in from people describing strange movements along the rural side of the river, especially near tree gaps and wooded strips between fields and the riverbank. Some described a tall, angular figure retreating up an embankment at dusk. Others mentioned sudden stillness and feeling of being watched in movement near the tree line. The repeated location is important. These incidents were concentrated along the Musconetcong corridor where rural banks, fields, woods, and fishing access points meet. The setting provides concealment, limited foot traffic, open gaps where something moving along the riverbank might briefly be seen. Now, the case was later attracted the attention of the producers of Monsters and Mysteries of America, and the Musconetcong Mantis Man incidents were featured during the show's third season. Taken together, the report suggests a localized pattern involving a tall insectoid humanoid seen near the Musconetcong River. The recurring details include proximity to the water, dusk or overcast conditions, a triangular head, large black eyes, a lean, jointed body, sudden disappearance, and the sense that the witnesses were not supposed to see it. Now, whether the explanation is cryptid, interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, biological, or something else entirely, the Musconetcong River Mantis Man remains one of the strangest humanoid mysteries ever reported in New Jersey. And I got the chance to investigate it. Now, when most people think of New Jersey's paranormal identity, of course, they think of the Jersey Devil, and that's understandable. The Pine Barrens remain one of the most atmospheric mystery regions in North America. They are vast, dark, isolated in places full of old roads, cedar swamps, abandoned settlements, strange waterways, and generations of folklore. But tonight's report suggests something much broader than one famous legend. We begin with a Dogman or Wolfman-like creature in the Manchester area near the Pine Barrens in the abandoned brick factory region. A sober outdoorsman of a naturalist experience saw something that looked like a powerful bipedal canine cross a wide dirt road in only a few steps. Then we moved to Cumberland County, where a witness watched strange movement in fog, saw white orbs flicker into existence in the woods, felt a low-frequency hum, sensed mental communication, and observed a silent rectangular craft pass low over the area before vanishing. At Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base, we looked at one of the state's most controversial alleged UFO retrieval cases, involving claims of non-human entities shot by military police, recovered near a runway, and removed by personnel reportedly connected to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. In Newark, an urban explorer spending the night inside a ruined Old Essex County Jail reported a massive winged humanoid with glowing red eyes slamming itself against the lookout tower window. In Belleplain State Forest, two hikers heard deep grunts, watched a tree shake violently, and heard crashing sounds moving through the swampy forest, activity that later associated with a possible Bigfoot. In Atlantic City, a man retrieving bottles from his car encountered a black-eyed teenager who asked for a ride, then saw two other children floating toward him above the sidewalk. Then in Fairfield, three teenage boys saw a silver saucer in daylight, experienced paralysis and a missing memory, and later recalled gray beings aboard a craft that appeared much larger than the outside. And finally, along the Musconetcong River, multiple witnesses described a tall mantis-like humanoid, one that seemed not aggressive but startled, as though it had been seen when it did not expect to be visible. That variety is what stands out. New Jersey's unexplained reports do not fit into a simple box. They move through cryptozoology, UFO encounters, military secrecy, black-eyed entities, winged humanoids, possible dimensional anomalies, and localized high-strangeness patterns. They occur in deep forests, abandoned ruins, military installations, city streets, riverbanks, public parks, swamp boardwalks, and ordinary neighborhoods. Maybe that is the real mystery in New Jersey. It's not only the Jersey Devil. It's a concentrated landscape of overlapping phenomena. Something in the woods, something in the sky, something near the water, something in abandoned places, something that watches, appears, vanishes, and leaves witnesses trying to explain what should not have been there. And if even a fraction of these accounts is accurate, then the Garden State remains one of the most active and unsettling paranormal regions in this country. Now, if you had an unexplained encounter in New Jersey or anywhere else, contact me at Phantoms and Monsters. Your report may help identify a pattern that has been hiding in plain sight for years. And as always, I thank you for listening. So let's start the Q&A. Please type your question in all caps. And if you did provide a donation, I truly appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and share. Any questions, folks? Alex staring. When was the last New Jersey Devil sighting or Jersey Devil sighting? I don't know. You know, most of those sightings come periods after it actually happened. I heard of one possible sighting near the Bat's Toe region, which is a lot of old houses and stuff. There had been some seen there many other times, but that's the last one I know of. In fact, there have been some sightings actually east, a little further west towards Cherry Hill as well. Paranormalism Net. Have there been cryptid sightings in the area of Wanaki Vortex? Not that I have received. I can't recall any. Mortal Clown, thank you for this super chat. Jose Sanchez, have the Mantis beings ever been seen in uniform like the Greys? Not any of those sightings. Now, there were other sightings, especially downstream. Now, the Musconetcong flows west into the Delaware River. So I know at least one other sighting, supposedly near a shopping center, about 1.5 miles down from Hackettstown. But I couldn't get much information from that witness, so I didn't include it. Squatch, have you heard of any historical accounts of the paranormal in the Pine Barrens from early settlers and indigenous tribes? Well, of course, it's the Leeds legend. And, I don't know. Let's see, there were the Delaware Indians, Lemhi tribes. But as far as legends, there could be. I haven't really concentrated on those tribes. Now, the Delaware did move further west and into this area where we live at now, and they are a warring tribe. I mean, they and the Susquehanna went at it a lot around here back in the late 1600s, early 1700s, before the white man or the settlers moved west. Because this area here, and I live near Gettysburg, was mostly all wilderness at the time. Anything else, folks? Okay, well, again, until next time, just stay aware, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the strangest places aren't that far away, especially here in the East Coast. We get a lot of strangers around here, high strangeness. So everything went pretty well tonight. We didn't have any internet and platform issues. So just want to say have a nice evening. Have a great weekend. See you next Friday. Good night.